In 1979, desperate to stop deadly Habu snake bites on Amami Oshima, Japan made a daring move. The government unleashed 30 snake killers on the island, betting everything on the imported mongoose. The official plan was simple: save lives by wiping out the predators stalking farmers' fields at night. But 25 years later, the snake population was untouched, and the mongoose numbers had exploded out of control, driving local species like the Amami rabbit to the edge of extinction. Japan left snake killers on this island, and 25 years later, it turned into a nightmare. What actually went so disastrously wrong defies all logic. Why did this fix backfire so spectacularly? Amami Oshima, a subtropical island in southern Japan, became known for more than its lush forests and rare wildlife. For decades, it was a place where fear shaped daily life. The Habu snake, Trimeresurus flavoviridis, was never far from people's minds. Venomous and unpredictable, these pit vipers haunted the island's fields and villages. Every planting season, farmers kept a wary eye on the tall grass. Children learned early not to stray from the path. Even a quick trip to collect firewood could end in disaster. In the late 1970s, the numbers told a grim story. Each year, the region saw hundreds of Habu bites. Some years, as many as 400 people were bitten across the Amami and Okinawa islands. The venom could cause swelling, tissue death, and sometimes death itself. Local clinics worked overtime, but the island's remoteness made things worse. Antivenom existed, but it had to be kept cold and transported from the mainland. Sometimes the supply ran out. Sometimes the cold chain broke. When that happened, the medicine lost its power, and the odds for the bitten dropped fast. For many families, a bite meant a race against time. There were stories of fishermen rowing through the night, desperate to reach a hospital before the swelling crept too high. Ambulances were rare, and rough mountain roads turned every rescue into a gamble. Not everyone made it. The fear of the Habu wasn't just about pain or risk. It was about losing loved ones, about empty chairs at the dinner table. Over time, some families moved away, hoping for safer ground. The island's economy suffered too. Fields went untended when workers refused to risk the tall grass. Tourists stayed away, frightened by rumors of deadly snakes lurking in the shadows. In meetings at the village hall, voices grew louder. People demanded a solution. They wanted the danger gone. Something needed to change, and quickly. The fear was real, and patience was wearing thin. In early 1979, the answer arrived at the village hall in a crate from Okinawa. 30 small Indian mongooses, Herpestes auropunctatus, were brought in by local officials and quietly released near the outskirts of Naze City. The plan sounded straightforward. The mongoose had a reputation for attacking snakes, and people believed it would do the same on Amami Oshima. The decision was made quickly, with little paperwork and almost no outside review. There are no surviving council minutes or budget records from the time. No environmental assessment was filed. The urgency of the moment left little room for caution. The idea had a certain appeal. Other islands had tried mongooses before, and stories of their success traveled easily. The cost was low compared to building new hospitals or keeping antivenom stocked in every village. A local official, quoted in later interviews, recalled, "We needed something fast. This seemed like a natural solution." There was no formal consultation with herpetologists or ecologists. No one asked if the mongoose and the Habu even kept the same hours. The only requirement was action. So one morning, the animals were set loose at several sites around the city's edge. The release was covered in the local paper, more as a point of hope than a scientific milestone. Residents gathered to watch, some cheering, others simply relieved to see something, anything being done. The relief was short-lived. Within days, the mongooses vanished into the undergrowth, their movements untracked and undocumented. There was no follow-up plan, no monitoring, and no one assigned to check what happened next. The island's leaders had made their move. The expectation was clear: let nature take its course. With the cages now empty, the officials turned their attention back to the other crises of the day, satisfied that they had answered the public's call. But beneath the surface, a crucial detail had gone unnoticed. The administrative process had been swift, but the science behind it was almost entirely absent. The real consequences of that morning's decision would take years to reveal themselves. Mongooses are active during the day. Habu snakes, on the other hand, begin to hunt only after dusk. That meant the two species almost never crossed paths. The plan to pit one against the other was doomed from the start, something any field ecologist could have pointed out, even in 1979. In fact, later interviews with researchers revealed that the basic biology of both animals was well documented long before the release. The literature clearly described the mongoose as a diurnal predator and the habu as strictly nocturnal, but that information never made it into the decision room. Once the mongooses slipped into the forests, they didn't go looking for snakes. They hunted what was easiest to catch. That meant small mammals, birds, frogs, and insects, most of them unique to Amami Oshima. Instead of controlling the habu, the mongooses found a buffet of prey that had never evolved defenses against a fast, clever mammal. The island's rare animals, shaped by thousands of years without mammalian predators, stood little chance. Population surveys from the 1980s and 1990s show how quickly things spiraled. The original 30 mongooses multiplied at an astonishing rate. By the year 2000, their numbers had exploded to an estimated 10,000. That's a more than 300-fold increase in just 2 decades. The math is simple. With no natural predators and plenty of food, the mongoose population doubled again and again. Each new generation pushed deeper into the forests, reaching areas that had been untouched for centuries. Ecologists watching these changes sounded the alarm early. One, Dr. Yutaka Abe, began documenting the shift in animal populations. He noted that the mongoose was not only surviving, but thriving, while native species began to vanish from survey sites. Dr. Abe's field notes from the late 1980s describe a landscape changing before his eyes. Less birdsong, fewer rabbit tracks, and a growing sense that something irreversible had begun. The real danger was not just the loss of a few animals. Amami Oshima's endemic species, creatures found nowhere else on Earth, were now at risk. With every year, the threat grew larger, and the possibility of undoing the damage grew smaller. The mongoose, introduced as a solution, had become a new and even greater problem. The Amami rabbit, known locally as the living fossil, once thrived in the island's dense forests. Its ancestors date back millions of years, surviving ice ages and volcanic eruptions. But the arrival of the mongoose changed everything almost overnight. Field journals from the late 1980s describe forest trails suddenly silent. No fresh rabbit droppings, no nighttime rustlings. Instead, researchers found tufts of fur and broken bones scattered along old burrows. Stomach content studies confirmed the worst fears. Mongooses were eating both adult rabbits and their young, sometimes wiping out entire family groups in a single season. The Amami woodcock, a bird found nowhere else on Earth, fared no better. It nests on the ground, laying eggs in shallow scrapes hidden among leaves. Once the mongooses learned to hunt by scent, whole clutches vanished in a matter of days. Birdwatchers who once counted dozens of woodcocks in a morning started going weeks without a single sighting. Camera traps set up to monitor surviving nests often captured only the flash of a mongoose's tail as it raided yet another brood. Amphibians and reptiles too suffered heavy losses. The Amami Ishikawa's frog, with its bright green skin, became easy prey. Even the Ryukyu long-haired rat, itself a rare species, began to disappear from survey grids as mongoose numbers rose. The cascade didn't stop with wild species. Farmers started reporting missing chickens and ducks, their coops raided in broad daylight. For families who relied on small flocks for eggs and meat, these losses cut deep. Local elders remember a time when the Amami rabbit was a symbol of the island's resilience. Its image appeared on festival banners, children's storybooks, and even postage stamps. By the mid-1990s, that symbol had become a warning. Biologists warned that if the decline continued, the world could lose the Amami rabbit forever. The knowledge that these animals existed nowhere else made every loss feel final. Each vanished species was not just a number, but a piece of the island's identity slipping away. The sense of urgency grew with every empty burrow and every silent forest morning. Something had to be done, and quickly, before the island's unique life disappeared for good. By the early 1990s, the damage was impossible to ignore. Reports from farmers and birdwatchers painted a bleak picture: empty burrows, vanished flocks, and fields stripped of their small creatures. Yet for years, the only response was frustration. Local officials handed out traps and offered small rewards for every mongoose caught, but the results barely made a dent. In 1993, the government launched its first official trapping program, hoping that community incentives might slow the invasion. Villagers set box traps along forest edges and rice paddies, sometimes catching a mongoose or two, but the numbers kept climbing. The real turning point came with a series of scientific surveys in 1998 and 1999. Teams of ecologists led by researchers like Dr. Yutaka Abe fanned out across Amami Oshima. They set up camera grids, counted animal droppings, and tracked the spread of both predators and prey. Their findings were stark. Mongoose populations had reached nearly every corner of the island, while the Amami rabbit and other endemics had disappeared from entire regions. The data left no room for doubt. Internal government memos from that period, later referenced in conservation reports, acknowledged the scale of the crisis for the first time. The story was no longer just about a failed experiment. It was about the possible loss of an entire ecosystem. For the first time, national agencies began to discuss the need for stronger legal tools and a unified response. The fate of Amami Oshima's wildlife had become a matter of national urgency. In 2005, Japan passed the Invasive Alien Species Act, for the first time giving the government clear authority to treat the mongoose as an official threat. The law did not just ban further introductions, it demanded a coordinated campaign to remove every last animal from Amami Oshima. The Ministry of the Environment took the lead, but the job was too big for any single agency. So a new team formed, the Amami Mongoose Busters. Scientists, local residents and wildlife officers worked together, their headquarters a mix of field tents and battered pickup trucks. At the centre stood Dr. Yutaka Abe, a field biologist who had tracked the mongoose problem for decades. He brought both scientific rigour and a stubborn sense of hope. Early efforts were simple. The team set out thousands of box traps baited with fish or chicken. But mongooses are clever. They learned to avoid the traps, slipping through the forest unseen. As the animals grew warier, the response evolved. By 2010, the campaign had added motion-triggered cameras, creating a grid that covered the island's most remote valleys. Each night, the team reviewed hundreds of images, searching for the telltale streak of a mongoose's tail. When a sighting came in, teams moved fast, resetting traps and calling in the next line of defense. Detection dogs trained to follow mongoose scent for miles through tangled undergrowth. Technology kept advancing. Soil and water samples were tested for traces of mongoose DNA, giving the team a way to confirm the animal's presence, even when no tracks or droppings could be found. Every new tool added another layer of precision. By the late 2010s, the eradication effort had become a high-tech operation, with every capture logged, mapped, and analysed. The goal was simple on paper: 0 mongooses left. In practice, it was a marathon, one that would last nearly 2 decades and require both patience and innovation at every step. April 2018, deep in the forests of Amami Oshima, the capture team moved with quiet urgency. After years of tracking, cameras and scent dogs, their logs recorded something extraordinary. A single breeding female mongoose, the last known on the island, trapped and confirmed by a trio of methods: camera footage, canine scent trails, and environmental DNA from nearby streams. Ministry officials arrived to witness the moment, some barely speaking as the cage door snapped shut. The team logged every detail: time, GPS coordinates, weather, even the bait used. For the first time, the data showed no sign of a breeding pair anywhere else. But celebration had to wait. The rules were clear: no declaration of victory until 6 full years had passed without a single mongoose detected. The Ministry of the Environment, under pressure from UNESCO after Amami Oshima's World Heritage status in 2021, enforced a strict protocol. Over 30,000 traps stayed in place. Detection dogs and camera grids swept the forests, valleys, and streams. Every week, field logs were checked for even the faintest clue. A paw print, a tuft of fur, a blurry image. Nothing turned up. The wait was deliberate, almost agonizing. The verification panel required 2 separate probability models to confirm the absence, not just a lack of sightings. Only after 6 mongoose-free years did the panel convene. On September 3, 2024, officials finally announced what so many had worked for. Amami Oshima was mongoose-free. The relief was real, but so was the knowledge of just how much it had taken to get there. In 1979, 30 mongooses were released on Amami Oshima to solve the Habu snake crisis, but by the year 2000, their population had surged to an estimated 10,000. Over the next 4 decades, official reports documented dramatic declines in species like the Amami rabbit and native birds, directly linked to mongoose predation. Despite the scale of the problem, records show there was no formal risk assessment before the release, and some decision-making documents from the era remain inaccessible. The eradication campaign, launched in 1993 and completed in 2024, stands as one of the longest in Japanese conservation history. Today, Amami Oshima's ecosystem is recovering, but the full cost to its biodiversity may never be known. This case underscores the importance of evidence-based policy and the unpredictable consequences of biological intervention, as documented in government archives and scientific studies.